Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's MD Gives More webinar, Building a Great Giving Tuesday Campaign Storytelling and Marketing. I'm Allison Albert. I'm the campaign coordinator for Maryland Gives More and your host for today, and also the membership and marketing director for Maryland Nonprofits. So first, I want to share a couple of things about Maryland Nonprofits' involvement in MD Gives More and also about today's webinar, and then I'll introduce our presenter. First and foremost, to eliminate background noise, I would appreciate it if everybody would either mute their line or press *6 on their phone to mute the webinar. Go ahead and do that for me, please. *6 to mute your line, or you can mute on your phone, whatever works for you. Great. Thank you so much. So in case you aren't aware, Maryland Nonprofits is the State Association of Nonprofit Organizations. Our mission is to help nonprofits achieve their missions more easily. We offer assistance with the important things nonprofits need, like best practices in management and governance, discounts on insurance, or in today's case, fundraising. We are the organization that's leading the Maryland Gives More campaign, but as such, I've received no additional financial benefit or gain. It is our honor to serve in this capacity to benefit the nonprofit sector in Maryland. I did just want to mention that membership with Maryland Nonprofits is available to any interested organization in the state. If you're not a member and you'd like more information about joining, please visit our website at www.marylandnonprofits.org. If you are a current member, thank you. We're so glad you're here on the webinar with us today. A few notes about the webinar. Everybody muted their lines. I'm just going to go through really fast and make sure your lines are muted so there's no background noise during the presentation. Because of that, if you have questions during today's presentation, please submit them via the little chat window, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation in a facilitated question and answer session. We will be recording today's presentation and posting it on the Nonprofit Toolkit page at www.marylandgivesmore.com, which is the Maryland Gives More campaign's website. And of course, we'll share a copy of the presentation with you afterwards in a follow-up email. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Jamie McDonald. Jamie is the president of Generosity, Inc. Her mission is to spur people to give, act, and innovate on behalf of communities, causes, and schools.
She's doing the same presentation.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Do you mind muting your phone lines? You can press *6 on your telephone. Thank you so much. Okay. So Jamie, after 16 years as an investment banker, Jamie shifted her personal mission to innovation and growth of the generosity economy. In addition to working with hundreds of nonprofits on their individual fundraising, in 2013, Jamie led Be More Gives More, the Giving Tuesday movement that raised $5.7 million in a single day and earned Baltimore the most generous city in America honor. In 2014, she served as the lead advisor to our campaign, the Maryland Gives More campaign, that raised $9.2 million, as well as leading Network for Good's record-breaking Giving Tuesday campaign, which engaged nearly 4,000 nonprofits in a day of generosity, tallying more than $4 million. So needless to say, she's a generosity expert, and we're very lucky to have her here with us today, especially because she's got a bit of a cold. So extra thank you, Jamie, for going above and beyond to still participate in today's webinar. So why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Allison. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
So just before we get started, a couple of notes in advance. As Allison said, I have been a bit under the weather, and so I apologize for my voice, and I hope it will hold up through this webinar. I do see some familiar names on the sign up for the webinar today, and I'm excited to share with you this next webinar, which is really building on the ones that we've done up to this point, and kind of really starting to drill in on telling the story for your campaign. On the heels of planning your campaign and then talking about some of the strategic opportunities like peer-to-peer fundraising and monthly giving, today we're going to really start to focus in on the tactical approach for building your campaign story and your campaign outreach, so that you hopefully can inspire the maximum number of people possible to support your efforts. So this should be viewed as part of a series. If you haven't participated in one of these before, the 3 webinars that we've done up to this point are all available on the is it MarilynGivesMore.com site, I believe. Allison can send that in the follow-up, but that way you'll have the context of all the other ones that have led into this. So with that, since Allison made that nice introduction, I will skip over about me, other than to say to all of you, beyond the fact that I've led these campaigns, I am also a Baltimorean myself, and so particularly passionate about the role that we can play in the state and the city in terms of boosting generosity. I think we still have 1 or 2 people that are unmuted. If you could, I think somebody named Kelly perhaps, if you could take just a second and hit *6 and mute your phone, that would be great. Thanks so much. That's much better. I'm already hearing a little ring in my ears from my cold, so it's helpful not to have that extra background noise. So just a couple of points of background for those of you who haven't participated in these webinars before. For those of you who had, bear with us for a second because you'll have heard this, but hopefully it continues to be useful context. And so Giving Tuesday has really gotten a lot of traction over the last 4 years since it started. And we couldn't be more excited as somebody that's been involved with the movement from the beginning to experience what has happened with this movement around the globe. This year, from a standing start in 2012 with a couple hundred nonprofit partners around the country, we are going to be at 68 countries participating around the world, millions of givers, and tens of thousands of nonprofits and NGOs. And I think the thing that's so important about Giving Tuesday for all of you as nonprofit leaders is that this is one of the few days on the calendar every year when donors are looking for nonprofits to support. Think about that. Almost every other day of the year, we all work in reverse. We who work in the generosity sector are looking for our donors. Well, this is one of the handful of days on the calendar each year when donors are looking for us. So it's an incredible opportunity to position your organization to capitalize on that interest and be sure that you're ready to make the most of what has become a really important day on the calendar. And so the whole thing about giving days like Giving Tuesday is that they create an opportunity for you to put on a virtual party for your cause. And just like a party that you'd plan for any other occasion, Giving Tuesday requires some of those same elements. It requires a theme, and it requires, the decoration. Think about that as the branding. It requires the right guests to be invited. Who are you trying to target? Who are the donors or the people that you want to inspire with your campaign? You need the right, you need the right table set. You need the right food. You get the idea. So your Giving Tuesday campaign should be thought of as a cohesive entity that is really geared toward bringing the right people to the table and getting them to do the right action at the right time. The right action is whatever you set forth as your goal, and the right time is on Giving Tuesday, or in some cases people start their campaign a little before or run it a little bit longer than Giving Tuesday itself, all of which are fine and appropriate. But this kind of cohesive thinking around your campaign is really going to be important, and we're going to dig into some of the ways that you can do that today. In terms of why these days work, first and foremost is it's an opportunity to raise money for your cause. That isn't everybody's goal, but for the vast majority of nonprofits, dollars are a key reason that they are participating in Giving Tuesday. It's a great day to raise dollars. L'Oreal, it looks like we've got, there we go. The second thing is it's an incredible opportunity to tell your story. Your organization in this moment has a chance to reach those donors who are looking for something to be inspired by and have an iconic story to tell about what you do and the impact you make on the lives of people in our community. Think about that story carefully. We're going to give you some tools and techniques for sort of crafting a great story today, but that's your opportunity on Giving Tuesday. Fun is a key part of it. That, following in that same vein of, a party for your cause, Giving Tuesday is a day that should be fun for your team, fun for your board, fun for your supporters and your ambassadors that are helping to spread the word. And part of the reason that it's fun is because we're going to be working toward a goal that really allows people to feel like you've accomplished something important together. And speaking of togetherness in the top right, the next thing is it's a chance for your passionate ambassadors to recruit people by their inspiration, to bring others into the fold of what inspires them to be involved with your work. And we're not going to spend too much time today on ambassador cultivation and management. We've covered that in a couple prior webinars, so please, if you haven't heard that part of things, it's very important. And go back, I think the best one probably is the very first webinar, the Get Ready for Giving Tuesday webinar. Check that out, and there's some very specific tools and techniques for getting the most out of your ambassadors. The megaphone is really symbolizing this megaphone of Giving Tuesday. It's this whole notion that you want to be a voice that's riding that news cycle of Giving Tuesday, that's reaching those donors who are looking for something to support on Giving Tuesday. That megaphone has become incredibly powerful, and you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of that. And then finally, Giving Tuesday is not the end of something, it's really the beginning of the giving season. And so a well-constructed campaign is really about launching your December in a way that positions your organization for a great end-of-year giving period. And you should be thinking about your campaign in the context of your overall December outreach, not just as a standalone campaign. I'll make one other point about that just from a data perspective. If you haven't seen it, Network for Good a couple of weeks ago put out an infographic, and one of the points that the infographic made was about the difference between December success among nonprofits that participated in Giving Tuesday and those that didn't participate in Giving Tuesday, and then added a second criteria, which is those that use a branded giving page. And I think some of you know what that is, when your giving page actually has the look and feel of the rest of your campaign as opposed to just a basic sort of like PayPal form. And what they found was that nonprofits that participated in Giving Tuesday did about 3 times the December fundraising than nonprofits that didn't, and nonprofits that both participated in Giving Tuesday and had a branded giving page saw a 5 to 10 times increase over nonprofits that didn't. So it's no longer just theory. There is actual empirical data comparing a set of 10,000 nonprofits and really looking at what it means to be part of this important day. So if you're on the fence, that data should really help you to get over the hump. And Allison can share that infographic with you as something perhaps for you to share with your board and your team if that's helpful. So let's dig into putting your best foot forward. What does your campaign need to do to break through and to be one of those inspiring campaigns that helps you to achieve your goal? There are 6 basic stories or 6 basic secrets of a great Giving Tuesday campaign. The first is targets. It's really important to know who you're trying to reach. You know, the most effective campaigns aren't about, trying to reach every single person that you've ever communicated with. The best campaigns understand what their goal is and who's most likely to be responsive to that goal. So you really want to think about, are you approaching new donors? Are you approaching young donors, older donors? Are you thinking about digital givers? Maybe you really want to make this an online campaign. But understanding up front who you hope to inspire in your Giving Tuesday campaign can really help to shape the rest of what you're trying to accomplish. All great campaigns have a great core story. What's your iconic story? What's that one pivotal story that when someone stops you in the elevator and they say, "What do you do?" and you tell the story of your work, what's that story that comes to mind? It's the one that always pulls at people's heartstrings. You need that iconic story around which to build the rest of your campaign, and we'll talk about how to kind of fold that into everything else that you're doing, but that iconic story is really pivotal in developing a great Giving Tuesday campaign. The next thing is impact. If you think about it, when donors give, what they're really doing is they're buying a virtual feeling. I'm going to let that sit there for a second. So what I mean by that is when someone gives, they're not getting anything physical or tangible typically in return. What they are getting is they're getting that feeling that they matter. They're getting that feeling that they made an impact on something important in the world. So when you're communicating with your donors and you're telling a great story and you're doing a great campaign, you're going to be very clearly helping that donor to understand the impact they can make with their gift. Just like if somebody was trying to sell you a sweater, they're not just going to say, "Come buy my sweater." They're going to say, "Buy my purple turtleneck cashmere sweater that'll make you feel warm and cozy on a cold winter day," right? Those are 2 very different messages. In their essence, they're saying the same thing, but one is going to make you want to do it and one isn't. And so when you're thinking about a great campaign, you need to think about the purple cashmere sweater that's going to make you feel toasty on a cold winter day and not "buy my sweater." I think too many nonprofits really focus on, just the "buy my sweater" and not that richer narrative that really helps people to understand the impact that they get through their gift. The next thing is that great campaigns spread because people feel good, because they feel inspired, and because they're asked. So once you've inspired somebody, it's so important to let them know that one of the things they can do that doesn't cost anything is they can help spread the word. And there's a huge difference. It's estimated to be 3 to 4 times the difference when you ask somebody to spread information than when you don't. So yes, sometimes it just happens virally because people are so moved that they want to tell a story to other people. But most of the time, people need that spark that says, please spread this story. If you're inspired and you made this decision to give, would you please share this with 3 other people who you think might also be inspired? That kind of very specific ask can really help people to take that step and amplify your message. The next point is great campaigns delight their donors. Think about that. Think about the experiences that you've had when something unexpected that's really delightful happens after you buy something or after you do something. Great campaigns without much investment at all can do something that really delights their donors afterwards, like a special email thank you from a child you serve, or a special note in the mail that is handwritten from a board member that says, you make what we do possible. I mean, think about those little special delights that can really, cause somebody to feel more connected to your cause. And then finally, great campaigns recognize that the gift is not the end, the gift is the beginning. It's the beginning of a relationship with a donor who will never give to you again if you don't think very intentionally about how to make that donor continue to feel connected to your cause. Some data just came out this week that showed that last year, for every 100 new donors that nonprofits in the U.S. attracted, they lost 103. Think about that. So in many ways, the most important thing you can do when planning your campaign is not just get people to give, but plan for how you're going to keep them and inspire them and move them to give after they make that first gift. So let's dig in. Giving Tuesday presents a particular opportunity and a particular challenge. The opportunity is that it's a day on the calendar when donors are looking for you. The challenge is that donors are looking at lots of other people too, and so your message has to break through in less than 30 seconds. So my recommendation is that you think about how to not just create that inspiring story, but how to projectize your ask. That's an awful word, but I've never come up with a better one. Into something that people can get their head around in 30 seconds. So let's look at some examples about how you might do that. We're going to go through some different kinds of organizations. So if you're a direct service organization, one of the easiest ways to think about how to projectize your ask is to focus on what it costs you to serve a client in a year. So here's a very simplistic example. If you're an organization that has $1 million budget and you serve 500 clients a year, then a simple way to look at that would be that it costs you $2,000 a year to serve a client. If you take that and then you break it down further, because $2,000 is a gift that's going to be a lot for Giving Tuesday, if you break it down, that would mean that somebody could support a client for 3 months for $500, or for 1 month for $166, or for 1 week for $34. So you quickly see that you can break it into a project bite size that people can really understand, and that brings it to a level that people can really sort of get their head around. Once you've sort of figured that out, once you've figured out what the bite sizes might look like, now go backwards and think about that inspiring story, because it's not buy my sweater because it costs $50. It's buy my purple cashmere turtleneck that's going to keep me toasty warm in the winter. So you still want the inspiring story, then connect it to the dollars. But the dollars are what really help you to make it real, the impact that the donor can have. So when I'm buying that sweater, $50 is the last piece of it, right? But now I've established a value because I know what I need to know about that sweater. Now when I hear it's $50, that seems like a bargain. But if all I knew was it's a sweater for $50 and I didn't know what it was, maybe it's a used sweater, or maybe it's a really ugly Christmas sweater, then that $50 doesn't feel like something that I would want to spend. So you want to create that tie all together of the beautiful narrative, but then tying it to that sort of easy impact. If you're an advocacy organization, sometimes this can be a real challenge because you don't have people or animals that you serve. So how might you break it down so that you can also projectize your ask? So here's one example that hopefully you could apply to your organization. Let's use the example of an education advocacy organization. What you may want to do is articulate how many students' lives will be changed by a policy that you're advocating for. So perhaps you're advocating for something that increases student achievement, or you're advocating for something that reduces student suspensions or something like that. So let's say that that policy would impact 10,000 people and the campaign that you're trying to run is for $100,000. Well, that would tell you that for $10 a student, people could participate in changing this important policy that will increase student achievement over time. But then go back, go back to our purple cashmere sweater, and now use a narrative about a student who went through a suspension, or a student who didn't have appropriate access to math literacy or something, and because of the kind of policies that you're implementing, this student's life would be changed. Then again, remember to link it back to this bite-sized impact that the donor can have so they really can understand. Remember to just keep tying those two things together. If you're an arts or cultural organization, lots of different possibilities for how to create a campaign, but here are a couple of examples. If you're an arts organization, maybe you're a museum or a gallery of some sort, you might want to focus on the cost for every person who comes through your doors, or perhaps the cost to put on a particular exhibit. If you're a zoo or aquarium, maybe it's the cost of caring for a particular animal, or caring for an average animal, or medical care for an animal. And then again, create a story that makes it all real. In this instance, one point that I'd make here is that stories should still always be about people, even when your organization doesn't necessarily serve people directly. Animals affect the lives of the humans that touch them. Art affects the lives of humans that interact with it. So even if your organization does something that isn't directly about serving people, make your story relevant to people, because people give to people. That's sort of it's a standard understanding in the generosity world that's what compels people. So bring your story back around to a human being whose life has been touched by the work that you do, and again, follow that same process of projectizing the campaign down to the point where it's something that people can really feel that they can make a difference with. And our last example is place-based organizations. So if you're an urban organization that has a catchment area, an environmental organization, any organization with a geographic footprint, think about how to organize your campaign in such a way that you help people feel that sense of a tangible connection to a piece of your catchment area. So this is a real example that I worked on with a Clean Stream organization that focused on a 5-mile watershed. 5 miles is 8,800 yards. This organization had about a $1.1 million budget. And so the campaign that we were able to create from that focused on supporting a yard of the stream. And a yard was $125, but you could break that down further to $42 per foot. But what that did was it allowed us to really help people feel like they could literally go out to that stream and sort of feel like they could see the yard or the foot of the stream that they helped to make better. And then the story that you tell around that is, of people that can have their dogs go and swim in this stream now because the stream is clean. So these are a couple of very concrete examples of how you might take this concept of projectizing and apply it to different kinds of organizations. There's final how-to that I'll provide. I don't know that we'd have any schools or colleges on the phone, but perhaps we do, and I don't want to leave them out. The big opportunity with schools and colleges is to take your big idea and figure out how to make it small, and this is a great example from UConn, who really broke down their campaign into a campaign for community service hours. And if you do have an alumni base of any sort, if you're an organization like a school, a camp, an organization like locally the Middle Grades Partnership, which has students that go through its program, they sort of act like alumni. This can be a way to really sort of make that tangible and reach out to your constituent base and inspire them to be part of something that you want to support. We talked about the notion of the kickoff of the giving season, and one of my favorite campaigns was a campaign that was so well done by a school that wanted to build a band for its students. They hadn't prior had access to instruments or a music education program, and this school decided that they were going to make their Giving Tuesday and then into their year-end giving campaign focused around first the band, and then the importance of out-of-school time programming overall. And so they kicked off the giving season with their Giving Tuesday campaign, which was about raising the funds for 30 instruments for the school band. If you think about the point I made about delighting donors, a day or two after their Giving Tuesday campaign, everybody that had given to the Giving Tuesday campaign got a picture of the students picking out their instruments. Then they carried through the messaging of this campaign throughout December. So following the students who had gotten access to instruments, but then also beginning that messaging that was really focused on the importance of out-of-school time for students, whether it was music or sports or other kinds of non-academic time. And then close to the holidays, they actually sent to everybody on their list a little video of the students who'd received their instruments playing this absolutely ear-splitting rendition of a holiday song, which even in its lack of symphonic harmony was still inspiring to people, because it was these kids who just had gotten their instruments, who were so excited to be having access to music, and it really sort of brought the whole story full circle. And people were so inspired that many of the Giving Tuesday givers gave again at year-end, and they really had set the stage for this whole out-of-school time discussion that let them really end the year with a focus on an additional campaign that was focused on a second part of out-of-school time, focused on after-school activities. So think about this kind of cohesive campaign as a way to really not just launch Giving Tuesday and let you have a great Giving Tuesday, but as a cohesive campaign all the way through the end of the giving season. So now let's get into the story that you're going to tell itself. So there are 5 elements of the way that you want to be conveying your story in the context of your campaign. The first is an emotional story, and we've talked about that. And to tie it back to my sweater analogy, the piece of that analogy that is this kind of emotional story piece is that's going to keep you warm on a cold winter day, right? That's that piece that's adding that emotional, that thing that you can envision. It's not just putting on the purple turtleneck cashmere sweater. It's about what that cashmere sweater does for you. The emotion that you want to connect to that is that second step. So it's not just what you're going to do, but it's how it's going to make somebody feel. The second is this clear impact, and we've talked a lot about that. That's the sort of the projectizing and making it very understandable for the donor that they can give X and that will have an impact that does Y. The next piece is this urgent need, and obviously in a way that's kind of easy on Giving Tuesday, because Giving Tuesday is by definition a day of giving, and so you want to really articulate why today, and so think that through in your campaign. You want to have a specific ask. So this is slightly different from the impact point in that you probably want to have a number that is slightly above the average of what you think most people would give. So if your experience is that your average online giver gives you $100, then your ask should probably be the next milestone up from that 100 based on this projectizing of your campaign. So in that one example that we gave, if it was $144 or whatever it was for the yard of the stream, that's probably the place you want to aim. You want to be slightly above the average. If your average online donation is something higher than that, or perhaps your median online donation, then aim that next level up. What the data shows is that people tend to move to the middle. So you want to have a couple of levels below what you hope people will give, and you want to have 1 or 2 levels above. And so you want to aim for something that you think is just above the middle so that you get people to stretch to that middle place. And the final thing is campaign consistency. It's so important when you're building up to a campaign like Giving Tuesday that you are sending out what for you is going to feel like very repetitive messaging, but that's okay. anything that that is going to break through is going to break through because people have seen it enough times that it sinks in. Think about when you're watching a TV show, for an evening, and you'll see the same commercial 2, 3, 4 times. Well, the reason is that all the marketing data shows that in order for a message to break through, it typically takes somewhere between 4 and 7 contacts, so 4 and 7 interactions with that message. So while for you it may feel repetitive and boring, for the person they may not even register it until the 4th time they've seen it. So have some campaign consistency, have a consistent visual, have a consistent message, have a consistent story. You can certainly build around that consistent story with other things in your social media channels and in other places, but think about having an iconic story that people will really be able to get their heads around. The next thing that's so important is that no one buys the features, they buy the story. So again, in my sweater example, what I'm buying is that ability to feel warm on a cold winter night. I'm not just buying a turtleneck purple cashmere sweater to have one. I'm buying it because of what will happen because I own it. So again, I'm going to keep reiterating this point over and over again because it's just so important, and it's something that, as somebody that works with a lot of nonprofits, it's just a mistake that's made too often. So I'm going to keep hitting this one. So great stories are authentic and emotional. They're really easy to understand. At their essence, we almost always can personally relate to a great story, to something that happens as a result of the thing that is overcome. They're generally centered on people. If you are an organization that is very data-centric, this can be challenging because you want to prove what you do. And what I would say is use this data point that your story should be 90% human, people-centered, 10% data. So I'm not saying never to use data. Data can be a reinforcing mechanism, but data shouldn't be your lead. And then finally, make the reader understand clearly that he or she could make a difference in this story. That the reading of this narrative is not the end, it's the beginning of their ability to make a difference. So if you're not a writer, or you're somebody that just needs the quick roadmap to a great story, this is a simple story map that I'd love to put out there because it's really clear and straightforward, and I think it will resonate with everyone. So this is like almost any great story you've ever read, and you've never even thought about it this way. So, the simple story map starts off with the once upon a time. Who is the protagonist of your story? Who is the focal point of the iconic story that you're going to make the centerpiece of your campaign? Then the next piece, and every day, is what's the challenge that they faced? So Johnny's the focal point of your campaign, and every day Johnny was late to school because his family didn't have an alarm clock. And then one day, so again, the until one day. Now this is the beginning of where you come in. Then one day, Johnny's family connects with Housing for the Homeless and begins to build the infrastructure so that not only can Johnny wake up on time, but he had access to better food, nutrition, housing, blah blah blah. So you think, and because of this, Johnny is now consistently an A student in school, and because of this, Johnny's heading into his senior year with bright prospects of college. And then finally, because of you the donor, we've helped 25 people like Johnny, experience the same thing. So it's a super simple way. Sometimes these old tried and true simple approaches work the best. And if you can do this, you don't need a writer. You just need somebody that's passionately connected to your cause that can follow a story map like this. Then take that story that you create and share it everywhere. So you don't underestimate the desire of even people down at the bottom, like media, like your volunteers, of course your staff. Like put it out through their networks. Who are your ambassadors? These may be people that are past donors. These may be people who are, in some cases, clients where that's appropriate. And I know that's not always the case, but where it's appropriate, clients can be ambassadors. Of course, your board. Even some prospective donors, people that have been on the fence about giving to you are people that can both be recipients and sharers of your content. But follow this process through, and the amplification that can come if you're kind of pushing consistent content through all these channels can add to that 7 touches that we know we need to reach to get a donor to act. So what are some examples of great storytelling? In my opinion, one of the best storytellers out there in terms of a nonprofit is Charity Water. Some of you may know this organization. If you don't, go spend time on their website. They make stories the centerpiece, stories and amazing visuals, the centerpiece of their site. They back it up with great data. They're very clear about impact. They're really, they've sort of set the standard for effective digital fundraising. They are an organization that started just a few years ago and is one of the biggest online fundraisers in the country. And they've passionate supporters. So they're a great example. And you can see here that this is the draw you in couple of sentences, more bread for the baking, and then it's a clean water organization, but they're using water to tell the bigger story about the change in life that can happen for a woman in a village in Mozambique. Viral content, we've talked about this. It's so important. What are the creative ways that you can take your iconic story or take your mission and help it to go viral? On the right-hand side, look, nobody does this better than SPCAs around the country, and I give props to our own Maryland SPCA, who's an amazing storytelling organization, and they're really good about tying their stories to the impact that people can have either as adopters or donors. But I love this other example on the left-hand side where there's an organization that tied together breast and ovarian cancer with health, and they did a national tour called the Pink Bra Tour, where they teamed up with CrossFit gyms around the country, and they went to these gyms and they invited survivors to come to these CrossFit gyms and go through a workout and tell their stories. And it created so much viral content because people were telling their stories and they're working out and they're taking pictures and they bring their friends and they're sharing, and it's great for the CrossFit gym and it's great for the cancer organization. If you can see up in the top there, Barbells for Boobs. It was a very, it also had a catchy name. But this is a really creative, simple, viral campaign that allowed a sort of a message and an action to be tied together in a fun way. Great visuals are absolutely essential. In Baltimore, we have an organization called Be More Photography that is actually a group of photographers that will take photographs for nonprofits for free. So if you don't know them, consider reaching out to them. They are themselves also a nonprofit, so also think about supporting them so they can continue to do their work for other people. Look, if you can't hire a photographer, my suggestion is all these cameras now have that repeat setting. Just take a ton of pictures. You will eventually have some good ones. That's just sort of that's a down and dirty way to get a great shot. But iconic visuals really matter, and too often the pictures that nonprofits use look a lot more like mirror selfies than they look like a great visual. And it's so much more impactful to have 1 or 2 or 3 great visuals than 100 not so great visuals. So think about how to get just a couple of visuals that really provide the anchor visual for your story. So some of you may have heard this story before, and if you have, I apologize, but I really like to use this example because it does everything that we are talking about all in one shot, and it does it for an organization that at the time that it ran this campaign had no paid staff people. So a question I always get is, can we really make a great Giving Tuesday campaign if we don't have a big team? And the reality is that even little tiny organizations can have amazing Giving Tuesday campaigns. So Badass Brooklyn Animal Rescue is an organization in Brooklyn, New York that does dog rescues from kill shelters in the parts of the country that have those. And they bring the dogs back to Brooklyn and they get adopted out. And this is their visual for Giving Tuesday. And you can see they've got a pretty simple, give a little, save a life message. They don't have an elaborate logo, but they created this nice little sort of iconic visual. This was on everything that they sent out, this branding that you're seeing here, so people were able to really, again, sort of identify visually with the campaign. And then they built the campaign around doing their work. So they have this very authentic mission, and they decided because they didn't really have paid staff people who could craft a campaign for them that they were just going to make their Giving Tuesday campaign a rescue. So they got in their car on the night before Giving Tuesday, and at midnight, 12:01 on December 2nd last year, they start tweeting and posting on Facebook and sending Instagram pictures about their ride down to Georgia where they were going to rescue dogs that they were going to call the Giving Tuesday dogs, and they got to Georgia in the morning and they saved 12 dogs and they took pictures of them and they tweeted and posted and shared the stories of their own experience in adopting dogs that had been rescued from these shelters. So again, very personal, very human-centered, even though they're rescuing dogs. And they did that all the way back. And this was an organization that with no paid staff people at the time was one of our winners in the National Network for Good Giving Tuesday campaign last year. They were our staff pick. They far exceeded the goal that they hoped to raise on that day, and they did it all with no paid staff people and just with a little bit of creativity and a real focus on the key elements of messaging that we talked about throughout this discussion today. This got a little wonky with the text here. Matching funds. If you have the ability to have a generous supporter, perhaps a board member who'd be willing to support your campaign with matching funds, I include this in our storytelling presentation because one of the messages that really gets people moving is if they feel like their dollars are going to go a little bit further. So if you can have somebody even help with as little as something that might be $1 for every 10 that people give, it's been proven to really make a difference, not just to getting people to give, but having them give more. So if you do have access to matching funds, think about how you deploy those. Have a goal for what they're meant to do, and spread them out over the day. That's what time of day means here. So make sure you don't use them all up in the first hour. If you've got $1,000 and you think there's going to be 10 hours of really kind of good giving hours through the course of the day, then put out $100 of matching every hour so that way you can spread that matching funds all through the day. And then here are just some sample messages for how you can talk about matching. It'll be important to have a clear message that sits under your inspiring story, because if people aren't inspired, it doesn't matter that you have a match. So this is secondary to your core story, but here are some ways that you can talk about matching funds. It's also critical that your online giving, Giving Tuesday is not a day where anybody has to give online, but it definitely inspires a lot of online giving. So you want to be sure that you're carrying your campaign message and brand all the way through to your giving page. You don't want people to get to some form and lose their mojo because they've forgotten why they got there, right? So if you have a back-end giving site that lets you do a little bit of customization where you can take that visual, like that Badass Brooklyn visual that we showed, and at a minimum just put that on the page so you're keeping top of mind for people the reason that they got there. That I understand not that can't happen for every organization, because some people do use basic tools like PayPal. But if you have that flexibility, it's shown to increase the conversion rate or reduce the abandonment rate, which is sort of the same thing but in reverse, by about 60%. So it actually really does make a huge difference online. When should you get started? Right now, and that's true whether I'm talking to people in May and June or whether I'm talking to them in November. The more time you plan, the more time you have to get those stories really great, and to have them be inspiring and have your visuals be compelling, and to maybe even test it out with some people and get their reaction and do a little tweaking. But if you're just getting started now, no problem. And if you don't think you can start till November, no problem there either. You can still do a great campaign. You just have to kind of do it faster. But if you can, now's a great time to get started. One of the things that would be really helpful to me is, because we want to keep Maryland top of mind all around the country, and I now work with cities and states all across the country, but I'm looking for great stories. I'm looking for campaigns that are telling an amazing story or are using a clever approach. Maybe you're doing an event for Giving Tuesday, or like Badass Brooklyn, you're doing an actual piece of your work for Giving Tuesday, or you've got a great celebrity who's going to endorse your Giving Tuesday campaign. But share with me, my email's right here, share with me your campaign. Let me know what you're up to. We may be able to feature you nationally and in the local media, because we're going to be doing some outreach. So please share it, and then Allison will also be able to share it, and you can get high fives from all your colleagues around the state. But we really love to hear from you. And with that, let me turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Jamie. That was a ton of really useful information. We do have a couple of questions, so I'm just going to go through them quickly, and then if we've got more time, people can ask more. So the first question, or a couple of simple, easy questions. There was a statistic at the beginning about like 1 in 300. I remember 300. Do you remember that statistic from one of your first?
What was the context? Remind me.
I knew you were going to say that. Why Giving Days work, I think, was that the one?
Wait, let me
Helping
see.
to convince your staff and.
Oh, well, I shared the statistic that well, there's a few things that we talked about. Network for Good has just put out an infographic, which you can share, which shows that nonprofits that participate in Giving Tuesday as well as their normal year-end campaign and who have a branded giving page raise 5 to 10 times what nonprofits who don't raise. That's one of the statistics that we shared. I'm trying to think what a 300 would have been.
Well,
maybe somebody will remember and it'll be back at the bottom.
A bunch of people asked you to repeat the name of the nonprofit that does photography.
It's Be More Photography, and I think it's either BE More or it's BMORE. But Allison, I can send you the link to their site, and you could share it in the follow-up email tomorrow.
Great, I'm happy to do that. And then let's see. I thought we had a couple more easy ones. Somebody's asking about the slide with the matching gift language.
So we can go back to that, but we're going to send you all the slides so that you can, let's see, right here.
There we go.
We're going to send you all the slides, so you'll have access to this when you get the slides tomorrow in Allison's follow-up email.
Great. Okay, let's see. So we've got a couple other questions. How could you apply?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You go ahead. Okay. How could you apply this method if your organization operates several programs? So I guess they're saying people identify them more by their programs than they do the organization.
Yep, I get that. The reality is that it would be easiest if you picked one of them and use that as the centerpiece of your campaign. It is hard because you don't want to confuse the message, and I actually am on the board of an organization that is very much this way too, that has 3 core programs that it raises funds for. And what I recommend for a day like Giving Tuesday is that you just pick one. And you hate picking a favorite child, but sometimes, for the greater good you have to. So that would be my recommendation. And then on Tiffany's question, about sort of a more location-based organization or question, Tiffany, I would still take that same approach of breaking down the costs of your building by how many people you hope to serve in a year, and see, maybe you even need to amortize it, because you may need to amortize that over a couple of years to get to that kind of tangible thing. Or you could think about the old-fashioned, like, kind of buy a brick idea, where we've seen this a lot of times in college campaigns where you're not literally doing this, but the construct of the campaign is you're sort of buying a brick on a walkway that's contributing to something. So you could develop a construct around a building that would be around that idea of buy a brick or buy a block, or buy a foot of floor or buy a room. So you can take that idea when it's a physical space. But you still have to remember to link that back to the stories of the people that you're going to be able to serve in that building, so that you don't get people stuck on the kind of the bricks and mortar side of it.
Okay, great. And then it looks like we have someone visiting us from Canada. Did you have some suggestions for her?
Well, so Alicia, I don't have specific Canadian examples, but I've actually worked pretty actively with Giving Tuesday Canada. I've presented with them quite a lot, and I use these same presentations with the team up there. I would suggest that you connect. There is, I don't know where in Canada you are, but there are some civic movements in Canada, and they would be doing things similarly to what. Oh, you're in Toronto. Well, so Giving Tuesday Canada, I believe, is based in Toronto. So I would look them up. I think it's Giving Tuesday CA. And if you have any problem, my email is on one of these slides. Email me tomorrow, and I'll connect you with one of their directors and get you hooked into some of the case studies and things that they're using up there.
Yes, and I want to reiterate Jamie's call for good stories. The Maryland Gives More campaign is definitely looking to feature and highlight the campaigns that you're running. So every time we get calls from reporters, the first thing they ask is, can you give us an example of a great campaign? So please help us help you, and send me those stories as well. I'll be sure to include my email address in the follow-up email. So it is 4:59. Maybe we don't have time for more questions, but thank you so much for attending today's webinar. Jamie, you especially with your cold and
I know. Sorry, everybody, for my voice.
Thank you. Did you want to say anything in closing, Jamie?
No, I would just say, to everyone, the fact that you're on this webinar, and I know many of you have participated in some of the others, is just a sign of, how dedicated you are to making it a great year, and most importantly, to raising the funds to do the work that fuels your mission. And I am always just so proud and honored to have a chance to be somebody that gets to play some tiny role in all of that. So thank you all so much. And our last webinar, I guess, Allison, is going to be the last-ditch procrastinators webinar in early November. But all of the webinars that we've done, as we said, are available
on the Nonprofit Toolkit page at MarylandGivesMore.com.
There you go. So have a great week, everybody.
Yep. Thanks so much. Have a great week.